All right, it's Tuesday, August 27th, 9 p.m. in the DMV,
And 6 p.m. here in LA, I'm Jack Armstrong.
and I'm Samuel Giacinto, and you're listening to Tech Talk Live. Welcome to the show. Chat or call in with your tech news and lots to talk about this week.
We
Um,
do. We've
we,
got lots to talk about.
we have to kick it off with the iPhone, right? The omnipresent. Um, we're a mere week away from the iPhone 16 event.
Very exciting. Yes, absolutely. So we've got a new iPhone to look forward to. Google just came out, of course, with their Pixel 9s. Perfectly timed right before, so people can start getting their hands on these devices with AI as the catalyst for this season of devices. I personally, the first impressions I've been having of the Pixel 9 Pro, very impressed. And I think that Apple's going to have to deliver on the iPhone 16 if they want to stay competitive. Gemini Live is very impressive. And I don't know. I mean, can Apple pull it off? What do you think with the 16?
Well, a lot of the interesting part about all this is Apple Intelligence, or at least the rumored, software functionality that's supposed to be going head to head, with the Gemini offering from Google. Um, some things, at least, the on-screen contextual awareness, being able to see and interact with items on your screen, at least those have already been delayed until next spring. So, in a way, it'll be interesting to see, what sort of promises does Apple sell versus the hard, here's what you can use on September 20th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check my calendar real quick here, but yep, that's a Friday. Which is the rumored availability date for these new devices. So it is, I think, and Apple has kind of been guilty of this in recent memory. But there are a lot of promises, and it's a little unsure of what's actually going to be delivered until the devices get into people's hands. There's really sort of the magic has been replaced with uncertainty, at least as far as I think the general aura of the event. I mean, obviously, when you have, now we're on the number 16. I mean, it's sort of like, any product iteration with 16,
Years before, yeah. It's been a long
it's,
time.
they need, and I don't know if, Apple has kind of captured the same sort of the magic of, at least, I mean, the original iPhone, or even the iPhone 10. I remember when that came out, or the X, as I call it. It's improper according to Apple. You're supposed to say 10. But a lot of the magic surrounding that event, was a bold new design, was a new direction for the iPhone, which was supposed to set the stage for the next 10 years. I don't see that same amount of excitement, at least from the AI space, coming from Apple Intelligence. And I think it could be AI fatigue. It could be, I think it's just something that's maybe a little bit less unique than before. But again, it all relies on execution. And with some of those pieces missing, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to
Well,
work out.
Absolutely. I mean, Apple events have never been the same. I mean, people aren't waiting out front anymore for their phones. I mean, I think it's really died down. I feel like, they're not taking AI as seriously. I think they're playing catch up. Of course, Apple would say they're making sure it's safe, first before they can introduce this onto their devices. But I think, it's interesting because for Apple needs to sell devices and they need to get people to upgrade, and this is going to be something with Apple Intelligence where you're going to have the newest device. And so Apple has recently been kind of touting, if you want the titanium great, you're going to have to get the newest device. If you want USB-C, of course, obviously that's a hardware thing. You're going to have to buy the latest device. With AI, same thing. So I think, you know, it's funny because processing power is quickly becoming, even on the Mac side, but that's another story. I mean, I think with the phones, I mean, performance wise, Apple doesn't really have an advantage anymore. I mean, I don't mean to harp on the Pixel, but it's a very impressive phone. And of course, the build quality is even better this year. And so, I mean, of course, Apple's already making their phones out of titanium, which is great. Maybe we'll see that with the 16 Air, right? I think it's very likely we'll see a renaming of the lower devices from Apple, 16 Pro and 16 Air or Ultra, with some of the names thrown around. But renaming a device and just throwing a few new colors in there, like we've talked about, it's not really doing it for people. And I think people need a change. And I don't think it's going. Yeah, they're not really taking it. I think you're right. The execution's not really there.
Well, you made an interesting point too about Apple playing it safe, right? And that's kind of been their kind of the general. I don't want to prescribe a certain methodology of management to anybody, but I think the Tim Cook era has been kind of encapsulated by that concept of safety. We're going to let something bake for a little while and release the Apple version of AI, and it's going to, in some ways, that refinement is going to make up for the delay in feature, which I think with AI, we talk about new models every other week, and it's something where the pace has been nothing short of breakneck when it comes to, again, another week, another model. So it's hard to at least, even keep up with the news cycle, but more or less, I mean, it's hard to be excited about, another player in the ring. I mean, it's, we have, a lot of, a lot of open source models, a lot of closed source models. I mean, people are on the fourth, fifth generation of, their prime time model. I mean, GPT-5, Gemini 1.5. I mean, basically we're already, well beyond, the first iteration of really any other offering. But, here's Apple, pretty late to the game in this aspect. And I don't know if that, really the concept of something being fully baked is going to make up for the fact that, here we are, a year, GPT, ChatGPT 3, 3.5, I believe, came out mid 2022, and it's, Siri's been laughable for 2 years now. And it's sort of like, well, finally, here's something that, could at least be usable. And we're 2 years, 2 years after, and oh, by the way, you need to buy new hardware to use it. Whereas, basically any other model you can access on your 10-year-old laptop if you go to the website. I mean, it really is just sort of like, I think, again, the concept of, safety appeals to maybe somebody out there, but I think from a consumer standpoint, we're a little exhausted. I mean, it's sort of like, well, why can I run Apple Intelligence on my M1 MacBook, which, more or less is the A16, A15 architecture, as far as a chip design goes. And why do I need, the A18 on my phone? And I think, a lot of that, there are technical limitations, but to a certain extent, it's, the phone is cheaper. So we're hoping that we can stretch the consumer a little bit more than, say, having them buy a new MacBook after 2 years. So it's, hopefully, again, it feels like they're kind of pushing the line a little bit in the way of like, well, open your wallet. And it's not, I mean, they're going to have to really deliver, I think, on the front of, you know, this is a true test, of their safety, of Apple's refinement. Is it going to be worth it? Maybe, maybe not. But I think this is kind of the most blatant attempt at saying, well, trust us, this is going to be good. It's $1,000 again. We know you bought it last year, but it's going to have these new features. So it's a big stretch. I mean, and I don't know if consumers are really going to go for it. And I think a lot of it is really going to hinge on, how functional is it really? I don't think there's going to be a lot of sales out of the gate. I don't think people are going to be lining up to essentially be a beta tester for Apple Intelligence. Most features aren't released yet. Most features are still in preview. Just to say, like, yeah, I spent $1,000 on a phone to, beta test software that hasn't even come out yet. I don't think the list is very long anymore. But I could be wrong. It's like I could just be another, man with an
Yeah,
opinion, but I really don't think people are going to, be lining up. And as you said, I mean, with the Pixel 9, it's like, hey, at least we had, you could really, be pessimistic on that front, but hey, they changed up the design. I mean, it's, at least a visually somewhat radical change. I mean, and that's something that's, intangibly new. I mean, it feels good in the hand. I know you recently picked one up, but that's a distinct difference from the Pixel 8. I don't know how this
absolutely.
is going to
Yeah.
be intangibly different than the 15, other than, we have some software magic. And it's like, well, how far can the software magic take you before it's, another beta program that, hasn't been, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
and supposedly, I mean, Apple Intelligence will be supported on the 15 as well. I guess the 14, I believe, is the cutoff for that. But I mean, still, you're asking people who have phones that are just over a year old to sort of say, hey, we're going to throw this out, you know, maximum of 2 years, minimum of 1 year old, throw their phone out and say, hey, I'm going to, you know, I think the same amount of people will be enticed by USB-C versus, Apple Intelligence, if not
Well,
more.
also, I mean, it's worth noting that you can just get the Gemini app on your iPhone, which is kind of funny. So, for an example, you could have an iPhone 14 or 15 or 13 or whatever. You could just download if you really want, but Apple's not going to let you upgrade potentially, right? Because AI is only for 16 and up, which is kind of funny, in my opinion, right? Because they could essentially maybe sell that as part of Apple One or some other little package for people that have older phones. So I think what Google's doing is I think smarter because they're packaging it with Google One. So yeah, Gemini's like included, but like with Apple, okay, great. You have to buy an iPhone 16 for Apple Intelligence. Am I wrong with this? I mean, it's they're everything I've heard, it's that they're keeping this to iPhone 16. So you have to buy the new phone to get the new features, which just it's like gatekeeping,
Well, the
to
15 will support it. You just need iOS 18.1. So whenever that comes out is a whole nother story. Um, but you will need an iPhone 15 Pro. So I guess Pro being the key word. But also you will need iOS 18.1, which is it's already kind of, I mean, I have to look this up specifically because it's like, well, usually, the iPhone comes, you have a new release of iOS, and the fact that it's already, oh, we're going to put it in the point one upgrade. It's like, okay, I mean, that's nice,
Yeah.
but it's just sort of like, why not an iOS 18? Why isn't it just shipping with, it's kind of weird. It already requires, essentially a patch or a feature upgrade. I mean, it's already the name is already extending. We put another number in there, but I
Well,
mean,
I mean, they're really just saying, "Oh, well, you need this fancy chip that we've determined you have to have the A17 chip and higher." I mean, I, I mean, it's a little funny, I think.
well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many unknowns with, I mean, obviously, take it with a pound of salt, but it's like, I mean, yeah, how much power is Apple Intelligence really going to use on device? I mean, is it something that's, is it going to be more expensive from a data transfer perspective or I guess, so it's something where it's like, well, you know, I guess, you know, it's weird that it's not bundled with 18.0, but I guess 18.1, will include Apple Intelligence, a few updates to the NFC chip in the iPhone, but it's strange that you know, it may not even come out on launch day for the 16. And honestly, I mean, I'm trying to find a release date for it, but I don't know if they're just going to go ahead and, I know they said spring of 2025 as far as the, when to expect Apple Intelligence. Um, but I guess, I mean, I'm reading 9 to 5 Mac now, potentially sometime in October. So again, they're pushing the line a little bit. Well, it's like, oh, the new iPhone comes out, but again, wait another month for essentially all the software features that were marketed to you. So I guess expect iOS 18 in mid to late September, and then iOS 18.1 sometime in October, at least from the latest rumors. But already just kind of like, it's like, oh, we need another month. So, yep, let's call it 18.1 and get it out in October. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very like, for somebody playing it safe, it seems very, very Google-esque, I guess, but maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, I mean, I think that all these companies are racing to captivate their audiences, and they want to keep you in their ecosystem. And I think it's one thing to note as well with the reason that I get the Pixel from the Pixel 8, it's just too good to pass up. Like when you look at the promos that they're running, where it's like the $200 credit and the extremely high trade-in value, and I mean, the net cost is like a few $100s. I mean, and then you can like get a brand new phone with Gemini, which I don't know, I'd value at maybe $100, 150 max. I don't think it's worth a full $20 a month, but maybe at least 10. So I don't know. I mean, but again, it's nice to play with for the first year. I mean, okay, cool. Like this is neat. I don't know if I'll keep it, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just a really tempting mix of value that they're providing. And I think that before this iPhone 16 launch, I think that it's a very smart move because Gemini's already here. Gemini Live is already available. And Gemini Live is actually pretty good. I'm not going to lie, Gemini Live is pretty good. I've also been using a new, every week there's like a new aggregator we talk about a lot. Obviously, Coggy is a great search engine. This is not quite that. It's actually called, I do want to touch on this real quick. It's called
Yeah.
chatplayground.ai. And Chat Playground, you can literally in the playground have six models, up to six models in the field at once. So you can be asking your query
Huh.
to six models simultaneously. And, you pay, again, why pay for all the models separately when you can just pay for this and get access to all of them. So anyway, it's a great way to do things. I mean, stop if you're paying individually for all these things. Stop. I mean, and that's another reason why, like, I don't think I'm going to continue paying for, like Gemini and all this stuff, because it's like it's already included in so many of these things like Kagi and Chat Playground and Merlin, and like there's all these aggregators that are just kind of combining AI access. Poe is another one that's very popular. So there's a lot of these, and I think that in my experience using Chat Playground, I've been very impressed with Gemini. And yeah, like I don't know what to think like going forward, but if you had one AI on your phone and it was Gemini, well, the thing is what if, ChatGPT or Claude, what if the responses are better? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think eventually people are going to realize that maybe an app is the way to go, or something like that routes your request to the best model and then can answer it based on which models best for answering your prompt. So yeah, it's a very fascinating space, I think.
No, and I mean that's an excellent point. I mean the aggregator itself. I mean I'm taking a peek at kind of what Chat Playground AI has to offer, and it's I mean it really aggregates all of the heavyweights in the kind of one.
It's
I'm
every model
curious.
you want. Yeah.
I'm curious more about the AI playground and seeing, how does it aggregate, up to 6 AI perspectives in one interface. So I don't know. It's like, do I have to read 6 outputs? How does this? It
Well, you
seems.
can choose what field of view. Yeah, you can choose. Do you want two models side by side? Do you just want one? You can choose four at the same time. You can choose up to six at the same time, and it's simply you just type your response at the bottom, and you've got your six little boxes with one with Claude 3.5 Sonnet, one with ChatGPT 4.0, one with Gemini 1.5, one with Perplexity, one with Minstrel, and so you can kind of at the same time also Bing Copilot, at the same time you can really compare all of them. And of course, if you were paying $20 a month for AI Playground or Chat Playground, like obviously better than paying $20-$30 for Claude, $20 for GPT Pro, Gemini 20, and Perplexity 20. I mean, it's just like, why not just do this all in one, and you can also compare responses. So I guess with Apple Intelligence coming out, Gemini already here, and it's impressive on the Pixel 9, but why lock yourself in to these models? And I mean, they're all constantly changing anyway. So
Well, kind of seems to be the direction, at least while the market is so fragmented, is just having a way to interact with, more or less all the competitive models, at least. It's kind of a way to hedge your bets. I mean, it's not to make it about finance, but an ETF contains a small portion of many different funds, or many different stocks into one
mm,
fund. And this is almost the same. It's like, if Sonnet is better at a specific AI task, you hedge your bet. It's not just you're not just subscribed to Sonnet. You have Gemini. You're not just subscribed to Perplexity. You have, so it's a very in I mean, at least going back to, I think, especially from a hardware perspective, it really does make you wonder, especially, to bring in the rabbit, as something that's a purpose-built hardware device to use one company's AI model. What's the usefulness of that when, you can run Perplexity alongside 5 other models, in order to see if it's giving you the best answer versus a purpose built, you know, and even to a lesser extent, the Pixel. I mean, it's if you have Gemini on the Pixel, it may be the best model at some tasks, but it certainly isn't at all the tasks, at least not yet. Everyone's trying to pursue, the mythical, model that's so multi-purpose that it fulfills, potentially anything you would want to do with a computer. But, until we're there, I think a lot of sort of the shortcomings are, more or less mitigated by having something that can aggregate, all the big players, at least for now, until, I don't know if AI will undergo kind of an era of consolidation, much like big tech, in the Web 2 internet era. But it's a good way to hedge your bets. Um, Given um, we don't really know where the chips are going to fall. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's smarter to do this than pay for each thing individually. I mean, I think, we were already seeing subscription fatigue in this economy. I mean, I don't think people want, I mean, I think if there was a streaming service, kind of on a side note here, like if there was a streaming service that included everything, and that streaming service simply paid Netflix's API when you watched a show that was on Netflix, and if you watch a show that was on Hulu, and Hulu gets a small little payment for viewing that show, kind of like, a little mini 50 cents, or I don't know, whatever price that they've negotiated. I think it would be smart. I think a lot of people would like that instead of paying, um, you know, instead of paying for everything. I think if you could pay for one central hub, um, it would be better. Do you know what I mean? So,
well, and this just came across my screen. I have to, not to interject, but the M4 Max could be getting 16 gigabytes of RAM. Not to derail
uh,
this whole thing, but I don't know. I know we may have talked about it, but a point of, a contentious issue for Apple has sort of been, a $2,000 computer with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which, more or less costs less than $20 to manufacture. Um, you know, so could be a nice, a nice little upgrade there. I just thought that was a little bit, a little funny. Because again, $1,600 plus, and you're getting, so you'll be getting $20 more of value in your Apple computer pretty soon.
that's good. Well, I mean, things are getting more powerful, so you need that power. You need that processing power. Um, it's fascinating. One thing I'd like to point out, we talk about data a lot. Um, Demo is a network for moving objects, infrastructure, digital infrastructure for moving objects. And they just announced integration with Tesla, making Tesla the first car brand that's worked with Demo to integrate data. And I think it's very fascinating with this direct integration, because, of course, they've had data sharing before. But I think what's really fascinating about, and by the way, guys, the website is demo.org. If anyone who's listening wants to go to that, demo.org, DIMO. But anyway, demo.org. Basically, your data for your car might soon be worth more than your car is worth. Of course, as AI and self-driving cars, and basically these car companies, and they need data, and they want to know who's driving, how people are driving, and they want literally to pay everyone for their data. And I think that this sort of platform paves the way for uh, mobility and data sharing to kind of go hand in hand. And whether that's simply sharing your car's battery or fuel level, whether that's sharing your tire level or the car's location or approximate location, um, very cool news today from Demo as well. So again, yeah, not to go off on too much of a tangent there, but
Oh, and I'm
data.
taking a look at this. It's quite interesting. I guess there's encrypted location. Um, you have instant, trade in, and basically, supposedly instant offers from all the car iBuyers. So, Vroom, CarMax, Carvana, etc. And yeah, I mean, you bring up an interesting point. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about, especially the relationship between, I mean, we're based in the US. I mean, Jackson, LA, and I'm in Washington, DC. So it's, obviously car culture is a big part of, the US, and, the way people are able to move, sometimes is, sadly restricted to a private vehicle. And, the data that's, generated from it, we've had a lot of, kind of high profile incidents where, essentially, the cell modem in your car is, sharing your data without your consent anyway. So to sort of have at least a, at least an option to kind of value that in some sort of way, I think is a good one, simply because, I mean, right now, the current MO of automakers are basically, we're going to share your data, and, essentially you're the product, but now it's like, we upload your data to data brokers who sell it to insurance companies, who sell it to, essentially anybody with an open pocketbook. I mean, there's really no control or regulation of it. So it's interesting to see, perhaps something that could be a solution for it. Um,
Or
Especially.
something, yeah, that's at least something that's at least providing the infrastructure to do so and the platform to do so, to compensate as a network of buyers and sellers. So if you're a data provider, you link your car, you're providing data to sellers or to consumers who would want to compensate you for that data. And it's all done in the form of tokens. So there's tokens that are worth something, and your data, by participating in this network and providing value, you are rewarded in tokens for that. And this is, yeah, providing the value for yeah, for simply data sharing, which is pretty fascinating.
And yeah, I mean, to your point, I guess, I mean, Tesla is the first automaker to at least officially support a direct integration with this platform. So essentially sharing some sort of proprietary access or information. I don't really know, and obviously it's, there's no binary switch, in terms of, oh, Tesla's sharing your data with Demo now. I don't know what level of it per se, but it is,
Sam,
you
I
know,
think you're misunderstanding. This integration, you do have to manually link it, but by Tesla integrating automatically, it simply just enables more data from the car. Kind of, I guess, like maybe like you could call it the core driving data. So you still have to sign up. You still have to create a wallet. You still have to create an account. You still have to,
absolutely, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, versus it just sharing it with Elon 24/7. So
Well,
it's
but that it is. Your car's already doing that and not compensating you
exactly
for it.
no,
So
exactly.
yeah.
So at least you're getting some credit for it. I mean, I'm just curious about the level of integration, right? So it's like, a Tesla is really a computer with wheels and not necessarily a car, per se. It's it really is just a supercomputer on wheels. So, what level of integration, so, they've opened it up, right? So it's like, well, what exactly, um, you know, how much are they sharing? Number one. Um, and number two, it's like, I mean, really, what does integrating even mean, right? I mean, it's sort
Well,
of, because they say direct integration. So it's like, great. Like, what does that even mean? How much? How low can they go? I mean, autopilot collects a massive amount of data that's shared with Tesla, but that's not necessarily shared with you or really any other app.
I think actually that's exactly what's now they're opening the door with Demo. I'm not sure, so don't quote me, but I know that before your car would do very basic level things. So it would do like location, it would do battery level, it would do tire pressure, it would do like unlocked versus locked, it would do, stuff like that. And so I think now it's doing more, I would imagine, like trip statistics, how fast you were driving, did you brake hard? Um, Again, like probably just more data about the car. So that probably opens up, I don't know, gosh, 80% more driving data. I mean, if I could imagine, before, if it's only, you know, your battery level during trips. Now you've got your battery level, your acceleration level, your speed levels, your GPS coordinates, I mean, I don't know. Like, of course, more data, more compensation. Again, I think it just potentially creates more value add for your car, your car's data to be worth something. So I think it's a cool platform, and I don't really know any other platforms that are like kind of democratizing the consumer's access to data, not just your car being connected without telling you what it's doing. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's certainly a step in the right direction. Yeah, I don't mean to be too critical. I'm just curious. I just know the term direct integration means it can mean a lot of things. It's sort of, you know, both are pretty meaningless on their own and even together. It's like it's directly integrated. Well, again, like, what does that mean? But it's obviously a step in the right direction where the alternative is, if you drive, a GM car, a lot of this is completely proprietary, completely unbeknownst to you. It's been sharing your data for years, and it's like, well, there's no integration whatsoever. You
Well,
get to, you know,
yeah.
it's, so it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Well, I think it's just more data. Like if your data is already being shared, you consciously are aware of that. So what's the problem with now double the data? Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. So double the data is now shared. Well, great. Now I get more compensation for my data. Again, if you're already sharing your data, are you upset now to share speed data when you weren't sharing speed data before? Like I don't see that as like a bad thing, right? Like you're still sharing data. I don't think it really matters, right? That's how I see it. That's just me.
Well, and
Like
I
you're
mean,
choosing to share data. So is it a problem that there's now a direct integration which allows you to share more data if you would like to stay connected? You know?
I mean, absolutely not. Yeah, it's not. I mean, and it's not sharing any more data per se. I mean, it's sharing the data that Tesla's collecting anyway. With, I mean, more or less just as private, if not more private, infrastructure. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely. Well, and again, data can also give you a more accurate valuation on your car. Data can also give you a more accurate insurance. I mean, there's a lot of good things that maybe potentially bad things, but I think generally speaking, maybe it could be a more accurate value if you've taken good care of your car. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people don't want more data about their car if they don't treat it well. I mean, who knows? I don't know. But yeah.
well, that's, I mean, an interesting, I guess, I mean, side point to all this. I mean, the average, age of cars, at least in the US, has, basically, pushed beyond 12 years. I believe it's at 12.3 years old now. At least the average car that's driven in the US. I'll validate that real quick, but it came across my screen a few days ago, and I think I don't know if, is it just a pushback on, and I think both can be true at the same time. But just, a pushback on, you know, the modern, I guess not, not wanting the modern, okay, so 12.6 as of May 23rd, 2024. And
Yeah.
the source is S&P Global Mobility. So again, it really depends on who you ask. Um, Basically, it appears the average is 12.6. Cars are 14 years old on average, and light trucks are 11.9. So it really depends on the type. But
Mm.
I think it's a combination of just, do people really want, sort of the hyper connected car versus, is it something too? I mean, from an affordability perspective, obviously, everything is just a little bit more out of reach. But I'm curious, what, what proportion of older cars, are on the road simply because at this point people, have really heard so much. We've been hearing the press about GM and, really, really all major auto manufacturers are sharing and using your data, um, in some way. And, that sort of bad press isn't lost on people. And it may come down to, if you have the option to repair your old car, for a few $1,000s, or put that toward a down payment on a newer car, it could sway your decision. Um, but I'm not quite sure the proportion of each. But I think that is also something that's worrying people down, in the same reason they are also looking at, you know using apps like Demo, is,
Yeah.
control over your data. How can I control my data? Well, don't give them your data. I mean, seriously. So it's, it's kind of something where it's like, well, you do have the power to do it if you just simply, the low, the low technology Demo is simply just, I don't need a car with a cellular modem. So
Well, exactly, and but you can also connect a car with Demo with a device that plugs in. Some insurance companies are doing that. Where you can have the car like port, the data port. So this device actually goes in there, and it'll. I think it provides a hotspot as well. Demo, the Macaron is a cheaper, smaller device, but I think if you get the bigger one, I'm pretty sure you have the ability to maybe even have like a SIM card and a hotspot. So if you want to make your phone or your car into a hotspot, I think you can do that. So there's other features I think that you can, pretty sure that you can do with the Demo. But yeah, it just collects data. It's like a little dongle, or you've got direct integration, of course, with things like Tesla, which that's kind of cool.
well, and I mean, kind of a sidebar, at least on, something I did want to talk about that you brought up earlier, is OpenAI's Strawberry. Um, kind of a small rebranding effort here on their part. But I don't know if you guys remember, sort of a few months ago we talked about Q Star. So essentially, summary, is, I guess, basically a few researchers at OpenAI had made a breakthrough that alarmed other staff members. And this new model was more or less, called Q Star. It was able to perform grade school level math. It had, essentially a large leap in its reasoning abilities, as opposed to, essentially LLMs, which, can't necessarily, make conscious decisions, or, abstract reasoning. And it seems like, uh, you know, OpenAI um, has rebranded this effort um, essentially to a much cuter name called Strawberry. So I think, it's
Oh,
kind of a
yes.
quite potent, kind of rebranding. Um, but I don't know the specifics. Obviously, this is all based on kind of rumors and leaked statements from employees. But it appears to be more or less the same project. It was just initially known as Q Star, which is obviously pretty ominous. But now it's named something a little cuter.
That's cool. So this is going to mean that AI can solve more complicated puzzles, math problems, more complex formulas, models. For example, potentially curing viruses and cancers. However, it could also, I read that we got to be concerned potentially about AI could start the next pandemic if we're not careful.
Well, it certainly, I mean, and this is kind of just the general. I mean, you bring up a good point, is with great power comes great responsibility. And this is, essentially it bridges the gap between, more or less, and at least from the rumors, right? I guess, sort of the aggregate, you know, sort of envisions, I guess, sort of two layers of system. We'll have a system that's more or less better at fast or intuitive thinking, and another parallel, you know, system that's better at slow, deliberate thinking. So I guess it's called dual process theory, and this is something I mean, I'm just reading about this now. New to me as well. But it's it's kind of like it sounds. It seems like obviously approaching a problem, in both you know, automatic and controlled ways can yield a more accurate solution. So it's something where it takes AI and turns it into a reasoner, which is able to reason and have that capability to tackle more long-term and complex challenges. So as you said, I mean, a lot of, a potential area of impact, could be biology. I mean, it's a very complex and intricate field that requires significant a lot of thought in that area versus essentially a tokenizer or a summarizer. um but it's apparently, I guess, going to integrate a star search, which is this is also a new one for me, but I guess it's a graph traversal algorithm. And I haven't been doing my lead code recently. But I guess it's more or less a way to find the lowest cost, or more or less most desirable path in a graph, which is just sort of a 2D set of points with associated costs of travel between each one. So in the AI's case, this will be able to you know sort of enhance its self-learning and reasoning capabilities. So it's something that's you know hopefully going to improve efficiency there. I mean, a lot of this is all, if it sounds theoretical, a lot of it is. We're just kind of relying on bits and pieces that have been coming out from OpenAI ex-employees, um, at least around the internet. Um, so pretty pretty insane stuff. I mean, because this is really kind of fusing what we traditionally think of. as AI with something that has really more advanced iterative reasoning. Much like a person. I mean, you can tackle a problem, you realize it's incorrect, and then do more research to figure out, well, why did I go wrong? And then attempt to correct it. Sort of that iterative process.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think that, going forward, AI is, as it touches more and more people's lives and careers, and things like, maybe self-driving car companies become, you know, the reality and the norm instead of Uber anymore. I mean, I think we're going to have simple things, simple jobs replaced, but also more complicated models can be generated. And I think it's going to be interesting as reasoning gets greater. Can we solve global warming with AI? Can we solve the next pandemic and not cause the next pandemic? And I think it's also interesting to note what California is doing. Are you aware of the news coming out of California and the AI laws in California?
I'm not. It's honestly hard to keep up. With all the chaos on the east side of the U.S. Admittedly, I do fall behind on my
Well,
regional.
so
I'll give that a look
yeah,
up right now.
well, this is kind of like, the California Consumer Privacy Acts, but basically California is actively working on regulating AI. So there's going to be a series of efforts to do so, and essentially there are a few different bills, but pretty much what they're trying to do is make it clear that we can develop large scale AI with predictable guidelines in a safe development system to ensure, obviously, that there's no issues with, AI becoming rogue, I guess you could kind of say or assume. We also have things, of course, that I think are going to compensate and allocate. We've talked about, publishers and their rights of ownership. I think this is something that's going to be very important to watch as publishers and, of course, the AI companies are training, their uh, models on copyrighted materials. But really, I think they're just making sure that there are guidelines in place, which is kind of fascinating. So yeah, California wants to make sure there are guidelines in place for safe AI development.
Well, and I mean, it's certainly I mean, it's kind of interesting because I guess the article I'm reading in Time kind of references 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear incident in the US that kind of set off a reactionary response. Whereas, this sort of AI regulation is being framed as more of a proactive response, and sort of hopefully preventing, a catastrophe before it happens and has, really the chance to kind of damage the PR for something, for a whole generation. So an interesting perspective, for sure. But I'll have to read the text and sort of see. I mean, I guess our favorite friend Elon came out in support of this bill. I'm not quite sure, if that's because he's already, at least yesterday evening, um, came out in support of at least the legislation as is. Um, but
Mm.
I think it's interesting because at least from a state perspective, it's good to be proactive. Um, but it's
Well, and so
also
much of the tech is based in California. Don't forget, so much of the tech is based in California, and
uh, yeah,
this actually could be a
absolutely
good
true.
This could be a good use of Gemini if we ask it something. We can ask it to summarize really quickly. You can ask it a follow up after this, but I'm going to ask it. So we're going to do a quick demo, Gemini
Oh yeah, ask
Advanced,
Gemini Live. Yeah.
in
See
the
what it.
Gemini Live.
Do you feel constrained by?
Uh,
So
so
I can't use notes or lists when we talk, and providing directions or things like that is tricky. It's a safe way for us to use Gemini, but if you want to try something different, we can always switch back to the regular app.
I would like you to tell me about the laws that are coming out in California to protect AI and to legislate AI.
California is leading the way with some groundbreaking AI legislation. One big one is the AI Safety Act. It aims to make sure that big AI systems are developed safely with strict safety standards. They're also cracking down on algorithmic discrimination, which means making sure AI doesn't unfairly treat people based on things like their race or gender. Plus, they have the California AI Transparency Act, which would force companies to be upfront about when they're using AI to create stuff like images or videos.
Thank you very
Can
much.
you ask it to summarize Bill
You're
1047
welcome. Is there
specifically?
anything else you'd like to know about AI? There's actually two bills with that number, so it's a little confusing. One of them aims to make childcare more accessible, especially for low income families. The other one focuses on AI safety by setting standards for its development and use. It sounds like the AI one gets most of the attention, so if that's what you're curious about, I can tell you more.
Curious whether the child care bill actually exists. Let's see. It actually does, yeah. There are two bills named SB 1047. You think they could figure that one out? I guess that the child care one was already signed into law. So I think they're reusing the number.
Bill, SB 1047, is getting a lot of attention. It aims to set up safety standards for big AI systems, like those costing over $100 million to develop. Some of the highlights.
So you see, it just kind of goes off as if it's a real human here, just regurgitating advice and current news, and yeah, it's quite interesting. Anyway, it's impressive, and you can change its voices, and I've been fairly impressed with it. So um, that's
Well, I
Gemini
guess
Live.
to cap it, I'm kind of curious. I mean, I still have some questions that we asked our rabbit from
Sure.
the keynote. I'm just curious.
Oh, so I'll let you
Um,
talk. I'm going to hold it up. I'm going to hold it up to the microphone, and you can be the one. Just keep in mind, ask it, stop talking, and then wait for its response. It is fairly quick. Of course, we're also doing this remotely, so you're not here with me. So give it an extra second, of course. But yeah, are you ready with your questions? I can activate it again.
yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
What's the stock price of Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola Co. closed up 0.9% today at $71.50.
Okay. Who played the role of Oppenheimer in Christopher Nolan's latest movie?
Cillian Murphy played J. Robert Oppenheimer in Christopher Nolan's movie. It's a fantastic performance.
What's the nature of reality?
The nature of reality is a question philosophers and scientists have debated for centuries. Some believe reality is purely physical, governed by the laws of science. Others suggest that consciousness plays a role in shaping it. Eastern philosophies often talk about multiple layers of reality, both physical and spiritual. So, what do you think?
It's funny. It kind of turns it around on you. But those were the three questions from the Rabbit R1 keynote. So I think it's pretty funny to I think maybe next week we should really ask them the same. I mean, because the Rabbit R1's been out, right, for 6 months now. At least
Yeah.
it feels like it. I don't know. I think
I
it
think
got
it's
revealed
been,
around
yeah.
Easter, but
I I think I've had it for 3 months, and yeah, I think it was announced 6 months ago. So yeah, it's cool. I just got a SIM card coming for this actually. So can't wait to maybe finally take this thing out and maybe not have to worry about it. Oh, I'm not gonna have Wi-Fi, and have to connect in. Just putting a SIM card in can be cool. But yeah, we can do a comparison in a future episode. So yeah, a lot of exciting times. And I can't forget to let you know, this is just a reminder, Tech Talk Live is brought to you by Before Sunset.ai. Before Sunset prioritizes your to-dos, schedules, calendar subtasks, and creates unique work environments to maximize your productivity. Don't forget, please sign up with promo code Tech Talk Live and you'll save 25% while supporting the show. Before Sunset.ai, an excellent tool to maximize your productivity. We love it, and we're sure that you will too.
Yeah, give it a shot. It's kind of consolidates a lot of the tools that you normally use, putting on music in the background, segmenting your tasks, setting a timer.
Yeah, just
So
cleaning things up, planning your day, pressing one button, boom, and it optimizes your calendar. It knows roughly what timing you should be spending on tasks, and it can of course suggest actionable items. It's a really great tool. Yeah, Before Sunset.ai, maximizing your productivity, planning your day with AI. Check it out. Don't forget to use promo code Tech Talk Live. And we're here every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Also, please visit our website, subscribe to our newsletter, and stay up to date. Follow us anywhere you get your podcasts. Listen to Tech Talk Live. We're here every week.
yeah, see you next Tuesday.